Welcome to Three, a part of the Tennis Channel Podcast Network. I'm Gill Gross with Joel Drucker and Amy Lundy. Novak Djokovic is at last an Olympic gold medalist. Beats Carlos Alcaraz in a rematch of the Wimbledon final. Does it 7-6, 7-6. Remarkable match. Stunningly incredible accomplishment. No matter how high Novak sets the bar, Amy, I think it's okay to just be sometimes amazed by what he's able to do, because on paper he's not supposed to win this match, and not only does he do it, the level was sky high.
He set out to do it and he did it. That's the thing to me that's really amazing. And did he win other titles this year? No. Was this a subpar year going in? Yes, maybe. But he had his eye on what was important and he managed his schedule accordingly and prioritized what was really important to him. And the run itself, I thought, was very well managed. There were a couple of injury scares, but then this last match, he saved it all. And like you said, his level was doggone near perfect, and it needed to be.
Yeah, we spoke about this a few weeks ago that he's pointing towards this, and it all worked. And it's so much, it was so emotional. It was so, we've known for years how much winning this means to him and his relationship with Serbia and what it means to him. I thought seeing him wave the flag afterwards is just so great, and seeing the emotion he felt is just, and then to beat Alcaraz, who'd beaten him at Wimbledon, who's at this point usurped his number one top player in the world right now. And it was beautiful. It was great. Two tiebreakers, high quality match. I think was it 252, almost 3 hours, right?
Yeah.
Just great. I mean, you just see what another Novak highlight reel, another part of the whole incredible career, which is like where no man has gone before.
Yeah, I'm so amazed that he never got tight. It just, there was never any passivity. He continued to go after it. His feet kept on moving. The ball kept coming off of his racket clean. Like there just wasn't even a moment of a let up down the stretch where he had all this time to think about the position he was in up a set after having a 20-year career and wanting this the entire time and knowing that this is the one that you don't have. And I think I continue to say this. I've said this after big Djokovic matches before, but when I talk about why he was able to be become the greatest ever, I think very high on my list is that he could play his best tennis in situations like this where most players can't. They, or maybe they can for a stretch and then they dip and they have ups and downs, and Djokovic just maintained it all the way through.
Well, I think that this is where the training and the practice and the work habits, and this is of the three who we've been talking about this whole through our show, he's the one who you would say to watch, look how this guy has built his game. I mean, they're great too, but look at the things he's done, the things he says that don't always come naturally to him. When that thing he talked about with John Wertheim about concentrating and his mind and all this testimony to the work he puts in, and very, yeah, structured. Absolutely, it's structured, and it's craftsmanship again and again. So that surfaces in these situations. Yes, I am in the relaxed place to play a tiebreaker in the second set of the Olympic gold medal match.
It wasn't lockdown in that second set tiebreak.
No, it wasn't. Well, no, it was an incredible shot at 2-all on that second set tiebreaker. Great forehand, but not an unbelievable shot. Just kind of like a wow, a little bit more than probably he anticipated. But that's the payoff when that was a fine rally, and then he kind of broke it open.
I was just amazed at how Novak played in the break points against him and how he made a ton of first serves in those points and played very strategically. He was ready for long rallies. He served and volleyed some. Just incredibly gutsy when you have a break point against you. And in the first set, I think there was that one game, it might have been the ninth game of the set. They were tied at 4, and I think there were maybe 5 break points against him. Any one of those, Carlitos converts, and we're talking about a different kind of match here. So just amazing how he played in pressure moments, like you said, Gill.
Alcaraz couldn't even get to neutral. I mean, he did once of the 8, and then he made a silly decision on a backhand down the line. It was horrible shot selection. But the fact that he only had one chance to even get in a rally was a testament to Djokovic's serving and what he was doing on the first shot. And you mentioned the serve and volley. I mean, that was brilliant. I mean, when Alcaraz was 18 feet deep, and to me, it's like, yeah, make him hit a backhand pass from there. I think on the forehand, Alcaraz, you don't want to mess with that. Even if he's 18 feet back, you don't want any piece of that. But if you can hit a first serve to his backhand and he's that deep and you come in, what happened both times on those break points is Alcaraz went for a great return and he missed it. It's what you talk about all the time, Joel, where just being at the net made the other player miss.
The application of pressure brings the net into play as a return factor. And now I got way more decisions and choices and things I got to grapple with, and areas and danger zones and all this stuff. And I think the clay also helped Novak because it allowed him to stay in rallies longer. I mean, having watched that Wimbledon final, not that Wimbledon is as fast as it once was, he was able to kind of hang in rallies longer, and also knowing, well aware that it was a 2 out of 3 set match, that knew Novak could kind of, okay, it's gonna be, it was still pretty long for 2 sets, but still, it's only going to be 3 sets.
It's one of those things where serve and volley will not go down in the stats because in a few of those, Novak didn't even have to hit a volley. The serve didn't come back, but the fact that he was coming in probably drew the error. Some of those errors will go down as unforced, that they were really forced by the fact that Novak was coming in, also by the fact that he made tremendous serves
I'd say
in these
definitely
points.
though. I'd say definitely.
So
Definitely what?
Like
so this
Forced.
I don't no I don't think what I'm saying is I don't think Alcaraz probably missed the returns because Djokovic was coming in. I think he definitely did, especially the second one. If you look at how he hit the backhand return, he tried to crush it cross court. I mean, it was clearly a I'm hitting a passing shot kind of approach.
So are you guys telling me, since you guys, the stats, if you serve and volley and he misses the return, the stats score it as they might even just score it as an unforced error missed return?
Service winner.
It should be
Service
counted.
winner.
It should be counted as a serve and volley. No doubt
Right.
about it.
The whole point about the serve and volley is he did it and you missed.
Yeah.
And you don't have to hit a volley. That's one of the whole delights of it all.
Yeah, it's not kept that way, and serve volley stat itself is rarely kept.
Well, it's really done since the Sampras Edberg era once upon a time, right? This is like it's so 1997.
But did they do it in 1997? Did they keep it?
I don't know if they kept it, but that's a great question. I should ask someone. I'll ask them if they.
Okay.
I'm gonna ask for that. Okay, you gave me a homework assignment.
I would, yeah, I think drop shot convert points 1 on drop shot should be in there too. But let's go back to
wait, when I just quickly about that drop shot. What's a dink from a drop shot? What's a then you're getting into some that, and it's funny. We were texting during the match about talks about unforced errors and errors. Amy, you got me. I'm like fully like
good.
I don't see anything.
You could define it. You could define drop shot objectively. A ball that would have bounced twice in the service box is a drop shot.
All right, USPTA. Okay, got it. All right, go back, Gil. You're saying something else?
Well, I just want to go back to Djokovic staying in the points because that was different than Wimbledon. Wimbledon was desperate, attacking Djokovic, who didn't want any part of neutral rallies, and forcing net rushes and redlining ground strokes down the line and forcing drop shots. And this was, I think, Djokovic normalizing, making the right decisions. Not that his movement was back to what it even was last year, certainly not back to what it was in his prime, I thought he was a little slow, probably the slowest he's ever been while winning a big title against a great player.
I'd
Well, that's
love
what
to
the
be
clay
that
helped him.
slow.
Yeah, that's what the clay helped him. That's what the
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah,
yes. That was one of my takeaways from the match. The surface actually mattered here. And the irony is the person that you thought it might benefit did not benefit at all. It was actually advantaged Novak, and that helped him. Um, but you're right, Gil, and there was one of those break points that was like a 9-shot rally, and Novak had to really work to get Carlitos. He had to hit like 5 winners.
right.
And he laughed. Remember that? Remember that
yeah.
one? He just smiled and laughed as he kind of walked away. And so many players would just be like demoralized by that kind of a point. Like, what do I have to do to put this freaking guy away? But instead, he just smiled and said, yeah, this is what I have to do. And if I have to do this, this is what I'm going to do. So I thought his attitude in that sort of point was really good. And there were some points where he really had to battle.
His movement was definitely better than Wimbledon also.
His movement is better than Wimbledon, but I think the whole series of factors because I think he points that he didn't feel the need to hurry the points. See, Wimbledon, he needed to strike or he'd be struck, particularly when he plays someone like Alcaraz. Whereas on clay, he might be struck, but again, the clay was his friend. The clay was his friend, and I think also the 2 out of 3 set format was his friend. He knew, okay, this is how much gas I have, and I'm gonna give it a go here.
But at Wimbledon, it was more, it wasn't about the gas. It was more about the quickness, right?
Agreed. That's agreed, but that's the type of tennis he felt he needed to play at Wimbledon was so much different than
Right.
this versus a guy who'd beaten him there in the finals before, a guy who's very opportunistic, forward moving kind of player. And here he could kind of like find some neutrality in rallies, just little bit like he did in Cincinnati last summer in that great match.
If I were in a press conference right now with Alcaraz or Djokovic, let me tell you what my question is. Carlos, you're 2-0 against Novak at Wimbledon. You're 0-2 against him in Paris. Okay. Or vice versa. Is that something to do with the way the surface affects the matchup, or is it just circumstantial and coincidental? Because that's not what anybody would have predicted.
What
I
would
like your question.
question, but
That's
I
a
I'm
mean,
really
gonna
good
I
question.
would like to know. I would like to know what they think of why Alcaraz is 2-0 on grass at Wimbledon and um and Djokovic is 2-0 on Roland Garros clay in this head to head.
no, but I think that this is yeah, but I don't know what anyone would have predicted. And I kind of, you know, how I think about what anyone would predict.
Well,
So I think though, but let me get to this a
okay.
sec. This is in the life of Alcaraz, if tennis years are dog years, that Roland Garros semi is kind of in kind of the even though he'd already garnered a slam by then, kind of the BC period of his career. You know, the gap between Carlos Roland Garros 23 and Wimbledon 23 even showed some other things different in him. And so I think it's kind of it's neat. And by saying Roland Garros, you mean venue, not event. So it's not
Correct.
quite you know two French Open Roland Garros events that are each 3 out of 5 sets. So. You know, we were talking about the occurrence, you know, the place. So okay. So right. So the question a little different than that. It's not like he beat him twice at the French Open.
Well, just say Chatrier.
Yeah, okay, Chatrier. Right. Once in a 2 out of 3. I think, I don't know, it'd be fun to hear how he answered because the great thing about both these guys, all these guys in kind of the big three are they give these thoughtful answers. I mean, you could see Carlos Alcaraz knows how to do that too. Well, you see, and this was then, and now it's now, and you know he's
I
gonna
have a little different spin. I think he made a tactical error, Carlitos did, with his return position, standing so far back And that was obviously not something that he did at Wimbledon because that's not what you do there. And he didn't make a change when he lost the first set. He just decided to ride that horse. And I think he'll look back on this and maybe see that as where he could do a little bit better problem solving.
That's a good call. That's interesting. Of course, when you lose a first set in a tiebreak after having several break points, you're not so it's not as you're not as open to making tactical changes as you are if you lose the first set 6-2 or worse. It's like 7-6, pretty close. What it's his execution more than its strategy, probably. But it's funny. I remember seeing that during the match. And yeah, it's like, wow, he was standing way far back, and it's Novak's serving. Well, Novak has a good serve. What's your view, Carlos, of how you want to commence the point? I don't know. There's a lot of Gill. You'll know more about this than me about return position further back
Sure.
and
I
what
can be the
dynamic of that. Yeah, I'm just learning to stand, a foot behind the baseline to return.
right. Well, Alcaraz is immune to pace in that return position. Zverev in the French Open final was averaging 130 miles per hour or more, making over 70%, and he couldn't hold his serve because Alcaraz was 18 feet back, basically blunting the pace. Djokovic doesn't do it with pace. He puts the ball in the corner and he uses that slice serve into Alcaraz's forehand. He did that so well. That serve is phenomenal. So I think the biggest difference was Zverev's serve was fast, but it didn't make Alcaraz move. Djokovic's serve made Alcaraz move. It made him cover. And I thought Alcaraz was struggling to move to his right to hit that forehand return. It would also get kind of low on him, and he would lift it up, and it was very attackable on the +1 ball.
Right, and I think that supports Amy's point. It's like
It does, for sure.
a little closer, buddy, because you're being carved off the court. I mean, I saw Michael Chang do that against Jim Courier because the people with the Western grip to make the move to the right to a low ball is a lot more kryptonite, right? They want to move inside out. That's right. I mean,
Right.
Yeah, and it really starts to get granular because, again, I keep harping on the break points, but if you go to the break points, I think half of those eight, four of the eight in the first set were service winners. In other words, he was getting a racket on the ball, but not getting the ball back in the court. So not making a quality return, not making any return at all. So if those start to pile up, like, my coach says, like, one, okay, two, okay, three, you got to do something different. But it's when you're in the moment, it is extremely difficult to be able to account for what actually is happening.
yeah, return position. I think, since in the last few years we've seen more of the further back. I think there's a whole series of courses to be taught on the whole philosophy of how far back a player stands at all levels of the game. What that means and what you're trying to do and what you're trying to do to maximize your return for your skill set. Because as you know, like I was from the stand and closer era, and then growing up in California, the way I played the stand and really close era, which the pros doesn't that's not so sustainable with pro, all these different things. It's really interesting. I think it's a really interesting topic. I mean, there's even, there's things to be said about where you stand, where you serve from, and that's a little easier to keep mindful of. But where you return from, it's like, oh, right, I'm just standing where I stood instead of adjusting and thinking about things.
But it's not just the position. At Wimbledon, Alcaraz was blocking a lot of these returns
Right.
instead of hitting topspin.
Mm-hmm.
So what Alcaraz did was like the thing he does based on what surface he's playing on.
Mm-hmm.
Clay, move back, hit topspin. Wimbledon, move up, chip. But Novak knew that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, those serve and volleys on break point, you know that he came onto the court thinking, if he stands that deep on the ad side, this is what I'm going to do.
Mm-hmm.
Right. That as Alcaraz has done to so many, as Alcaraz
Yes.
has done with an early Arsenal technique. Absolutely.
Let's go back to the Nadal match because we weren't able to discuss that, and we can work in other aspects of his run. Um I thought that this was a pretty good indication, or a pretty good kind of symbolic representation of where they're at in their careers. Age-wise, they're a year apart. It's not a lot. But in terms of the physical decline, it's a lot more than 1 year. And I think that's what looked really vivid on the court when those two played in the second round.
No question. I mean, look, it was one point, I think it was 6-1, 4-0 or 4-1 for Novak, and he was just so in control, and hence to Rafa for catching up to 4-all. But his movement and his strength is not a lot. It's hard, not a lot, less than what he'd been. At least he
Yeah.
was, that's what I was happy to see. At least he was healthy. He just wasn't the best as, playing as great as Rafa once was.
I think it puts a really definitive stamp on this gold medal because he beat Nadal at Roland Garros to get the gold medal. So that'll be kind of a nice thing. I mean, you're really like padding the resume here, and anything else going forward is really icing. But yeah, that was a dominant match by Novak. And just a passing thought occurred to me how there was some not criticism, but some interesting decision kind of thing when Novak decided to play Wimbledon. And in retrospect, that seems like a great decision because even though he lost definitively in the final, look at all the matches he got. He was so match ready. And Nadal just wasn't as match ready. And, maybe, like you said, more mileage at this point.
I think the other thing that may have been helpful about Djokovic playing Wimbledon is he tried to be hyper offensive against Alcaraz in that final. It blew up in his face. It didn't work. And maybe that just helped him get in the mindset this time of hammering home, even though I'm a little slower than I'm used to being. I'm not going to let that take away my identity as a player. I still need to maintain my patience and I still need to stay solid and make him beat me.
It's a great insight. You're right. And so that's what you get from playing 7 matches at Wimbledon and losing in the final. I mean, it would be interesting. What if he'd won Wimbledon? Would he? But he didn't. So that's a great thing. So in a way, it's a really nice, it's about as storybook as it gets in the Novak for all the great things he's had. It's got such a neat quality about the year. I kind of hope he doesn't win a tournament for the rest of the year. I mean,
I don't know.
I don't care.
20,
I'm fine if he wins 6 more tournaments, but I just mean, and he never loses a match either, and beats Alcaraz and Sinner and and everyone else along the way too. But there's something, hadn't won a tournament all year, pointed towards this one, and wins it. And it was so heartwarming to see him because we've known for so long what Serbia means to him.
Mm-hmm.
something I was going to say, something about the number 25 is just sort of a nice number. So I don't like to, like Simone Biles said, quit asking people who just won a gold medal what's next. But still, it'll be fun to see how he rounds out the year.
Yeah, yeah, no doubt about it. And I think there are questions for what this does to his psyche moving forward, and definitely the Rafa loss to Novak. I think that's gonna make. I think Nadal has decisions to make, just about like what the plan is moving forward for him in a much different way than Novak, obviously. Would you agree that like tennis? I'm thinking about what you said, Joel. It doesn't usually go this way. The tennis is usually cruel, right? It normally doesn't, the storybook doesn't happen. It's usually like the slap in the face, like Ons Jabeur, like, oh, like I'm sorry, but it's been cruel, right? It's like she wants to win Wimbledon. That's the main goal. And it just hasn't happened yet. And I just think in tennis, it's more common that you get kind of the sport's brutal than the other side that we got just now, where it's like, whoa, did somebody write this in Hollywood?
Well, the Hollywood stuff is rare, and yet it doesn't mean that Novak should retire. But look, also the last 20 years have shown us only 3 guys have captured so many of the goodies. so often. They between them 20, 44, 64 of these 66, 66 of these suckers. So that happens. So yeah, Amy's laughing. Wait.
Well, because you keep giving the thumbs up, and when
Ah,
you do that, it
oh,
gives you a little, it gives you a
oh,
little thumbs up.
I didn't mean to
Yeah.
do that. I didn't mean to do that. So I
Which
don't
was,
know.
it was actually like underscoring your point. So it was a
Oh,
great visual.
I appreciate a good underscore. But I think the no, it doesn't happen, but I think the cruel part, that's a broader topic about the attitudinal takeaway from the theoretical cruelty of making a living playing a game and all those other things that accompany tennis. Nonetheless, you're
Good
right.
point.
This is rare. This is rare. This is kind of really extra special. And I think, I know Novak will cherish it. And I know I will. And I think it's just a neat thing to say. You're right. It's rare that they're this delightful. Otherwise, there's a lot of the ambiguity. Oh, I maximized. Oh, the process. It's kind of like somewhere between, a few slams and no slams. And yeah, you're right. It's kind of like a trickier evaluation.
There it was. There's the thumbs
There
up
it is.
for our listeners. Yeah, there's something now with the camera that if you do a thumbs up, it gives you a little thumbs up.
I don't want to talk about other gestures.
Yeah. Hopefully the YouTube viewers actually see that. I'm not so sure. All right, we move on now to the North American hard court swing. Djokovic has pulled out of Canada. We don't know if Nadal's playing the U.S. Open or what. So I'm excited to get back together when we have more clarity on what's next, and maybe there will even be more kind of fallout from this Djokovic gold medal because it's just that significant. It feels like the kind of thing that's going to linger for a long time. That'll do it for this episode of 3. Remember, we're available on all podcast platforms. We appreciate it if you leave a rating and a review on Apple. And if you're watching on YouTube, like, comment, and subscribe. We will see you next time on the next episode of 3.